We are halfway through Nebraska season, and it's safe to say the Huskers are very banged up. Multiple key Nebraska players are dealing with significant injuries and are expected to miss some time. So in today's video, I'm going to go over this loaded Nebraska injury update. Who's out for the Huskers going forward? Who's dealing with some of these bugs? How significant are they really? A couple key players who are coming back from injury very soon. One notable player who was suspended last week. I'll give you the latest around him. Raiola, he's dealing with an injury issue. We'll talk about it, what it means for him going forward, his availability, and everything else you need to know. So real quick, this is a loaded injury update, but hey, if you're having a good Wednesday, I know I am. Hit that like button. And also, if you're a diehard Nebraska fan and are not subscribed, what are you waiting for daily content talking Huskers, for daily content talking breaking news talking Huskers? It's a no-brainer. It takes 2 seconds. Join this family. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. But without further ado, we have a lot to talk about. Man, we have a loaded injury update on our hands today. The Huskers, they are very banged up, but I want to get things started with one player who has been out for an extended period of time and is expected to return in the near future. You already know who this is. Senior defensive back Malcolm Hartzog. Now, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury ever since the Akron game. He's been out ever since week 2. He's only played 2 games of the year. Now, of course, he was supposed to come back for the Michigan game. The expectation that he was going to suit up versus the Wolverines, but the day before, he re-aggravated the injury. He made it worse, so they scratched him going into Michigan State. They were going to give him a go going into Maryland. They say he was questionable going into it, but he never ended up traveling to Maryland. He was scratched completely from the game plan. And unfortunately, once again for Malcolm Hartzog, he's expected not to play once again versus Minnesota. So the coaching staff, they're going to tell you that again, he's questionable. That's only for game playing purposes. They're planning on not playing Malcolm Hartzog maybe up until USC at the very earliest, because again, with this hamstring injury, he's far from 100%. It's a lingering injury. It's very hard to get rid of it. And they know that even if Malcolm Hartzog were to suit up versus the Minnesota Golden Gophers, he's not going to be the same player. Okay, he's only going to be 70 or 80%, and he's going to be a liability on the football field, because it's the same thing we dealt with last year with Tommy Hill. Tommy Hill's dealing with his turf toe. We tried to force him back very early. We ended up burning his redshirt year, so he had to again play with his final year, and he didn't play very well. And he went undrafted. He was a liability when he's actually on the field, and now he's completely out of football to begin with. So not only did we kind of screw over ourselves, we screwed over the team because we could have had him back this year, but we screwed over his career as well. So Malcolm Hartzog, we're taking it a lot more slow than what we did with Tommy last year. And also internally, I've revealed this, but Matt Rhule hasn't revealed this. They have had significant conversations not only within the coaching staff, but with Malcolm Hartzog about potentially redshirting him this year. Again, he's only played in 2 games, so he can still play in 2 games this season. He could suit up against maybe USC. He can suit up against maybe Penn State and Iowa, and the bowl game's not included, and then he can come back next year. Again, that would be in the best interest of our team, and that would also be in the best interest of his careers to come back to a secondary in Nebraska in 2026 that's going to deal with a lot of issues, because we're going to lose Sierra Wright next year. We're going to lose Sean Singleton next year. Marquez Buford. A lot of key players are leaving this team, along with, some unforeseen transfers. So it's important for Hartzog to come back, but again, do not expect him versus Minnesota, and definitely do not expect him versus Northwestern, but the expectation is that he will be redshirted but still plays in the final 2 games. Then I want to talk about Dylan Raiola, because he has been dealing with an injury over this past week. He's been dealing with some minor injuries over the season, but something significant, of course, happened versus Maryland. He went down clutching his left knee on what many would consider to be a dirty play. It was a bang-bang play. He got hit in the knee. He was limping, and then, of course, a defender for Maryland came and pushed him down after he threw an interception. Now, granted, after looking at the replay, of course, looking at the interception, Dylan Raiola, he was a defender. That was a legal play. It wasn't necessarily dirty like some people are claiming it out to be, right? I understand that when you hit a quarterback, it's a little bit different, but still, Dylan Raiola, he was a defender on that play. Given he threw an interception, it wasn't dirty. The defender made the right play there to bring him down, because again, that's what you're told to do as a defensive lineman. But again, we can talk about that in another day. The facts of the matter are that Dylan Raiola, he dealt with a left knee injury, which is something that he had last year. It's been bothering him throughout his career in Nebraska and even in high school at times. It clearly impacted his play a little bit versus Maryland, and there are some concerns with that going forward. Now, I want to make this very clear. Dylan Raiola will play versus Minnesota, and he'll also play versus Northwestern. Okay, this knee injury is not going to restrict him in any way whatsoever. But it should be noted with Dylan, that these injuries have stacked up in the past. Last year, he dealt with a lot of injuries. Okay, he had a shoulder injury that lingered the entire season. He had an ankle injury that lingered the entire season. He's dealt with knee issues before. So he's somebody who is prone to get injured. And also, at the exact same time, when these injuries stack up, he becomes a worse player because of it. You know, he doesn't trust his body as much. He refuses to get outside the pocket to scramble with his legs. We saw that all season last year. So that's really the problem with this left knee injury. Again, he's restricted a little bit in practice. They've done a lot of tests on it, MRIs to make sure it's all okay. Again, there's obviously significant bruising. There's nothing hugely significant, but again, it's just something to monitor when it comes to his mobility, because he's been a lot more mobile this year. But still, again, if he's not trusting his knee, if that's giving him some pain, which I imagine it is, that's something to watch, because he's going to be more of a pocket passer than ever before. So is Dylan Raiola going to miss some time? No, but again, these injuries are stacking up, and he had some arm injuries earlier in the year. He's still dealing with a little bit of a shoulder bug as well. But Dylan Raiola, that knee is something we need to watch out for, because again, I'm telling you right now, Minnesota, they're going to target that knee. That's just what happens in college football. That's what happens in the NFL. When you are a banged up quarterback, defenses don't care. If anything, they're going to go harder on you. They're going to target whatever's injured, whether, again, it's your shoulder, whether it's your knee, your ankle, your hamstring. They're going to target that. They're going to hit you an extra bit hard because they know they can get you out of the bowl game. So Minnesota, who has one of the best pass rushes in America, they're probably going to go after Dell and hit that left knee because they've been watched on the film. That's just the way it goes, right? You can call it dirty. That's just the game. Nebraska does it too. So again, that's the update around Dylan. Not great news around his left knee. Then talking about Demitrius Bell, he's expected to return very soon. Of course, he was supposed to play versus Michigan State 2 weeks ago, but was a scratch right at the very end. He re-aggravated something with his hamstring and also a couple other lower body issues. So again, he's been working to come back from his ACL that happened over a year ago at this point. He's not expected to play versus Minnesota nor Northwestern. Honestly, what I think is going to happen with Demitrius Bell, again, they're going to take it very slow. They want to preserve his red shirt and potentially have him be medically redshirted. But, you know, in order to do that, he can play in only a maximum of 4 games. So they're not going to waste him against Minnesota. They're not going to waste him versus Northwestern. I'd imagine with Demitrius Bell, they're going to make sure he's 100%. And then coming off the bye week, he'll likely play in the final 2 weeks of the year versus Penn State and Iowa. But Demitrius Bell, he will play some snaps this year, and he'll definitely play in the bowl game, which is very good news around Demitrius, because again, that's somebody who was high upside, great speed. He's Jacory Barney before Jacory Barney. But again, we don't want to rush things with him, because the worst case scenario is that he goes out there, let's say he's playing versus Northwestern, he's not 100%, and then he makes it worse, right? And he breaks something or pulls something, and then suddenly he's injured once again. He's going to be out for maybe next year, right? We just don't want to risk that at this point with Demitrius. But some good news though, he will be back at some point this year. Then we've had a lot of offensive line injuries, unfortunately. Elijah Pritchett has been dealing with an ankle injury. He was expected to not play versus Maryland. That was the rumor all week long. He barely practiced going into the Maryland game. He ended up making the travel roster. They tested him up before and said, you know what, Elijah, you're going to play versus the Terrapins. And again, he played pretty well at times. Again, he gave up a sack, gave up a couple pressures here and there, gave up a holding penalty. But other than that, he was pretty good in the running game, showed his mobility. So the ankle injury shouldn't be too bad long term. Now, granted, he was pulled in the fourth quarter because of the ankle injury. Again, that's what they're saying it was. He might have got benched, but again, they're kind of defending him, saying it was the ankle injury. I personally think he was benched because he wasn't playing great versus Maryland down the stretch. But again, if you want to take their word for it, they said they pulled him because of the ankle injury because it got worse. So watch out for the ankle. He is questionable going into Minnesota. That's a fact. And it should also be noted that Turner Corcoran, who came in his absence in the fourth quarter and then played the final 2 drives, he played very well. So if Elijah Pritchett weren't to play versus Minnesota and they want to rest him going to Northwestern, it wouldn't even be the worst scenario in the world, because Corcoran is actually playing pretty good for the first time maybe in his entire career, man. So that was good to see from Corcoran. But Elijah Pritchett expected to be questionable once again versus Minnesota. Gunnar Too is also dealing with another lower body injury. It's not specified what it is, whether it's an ankle, whether it's a knee, whether it's a hamstring, but he was questionable once again going into Maryland. He did play. He was not benched. He did not get taken out of the ballgame at any moment. Now, granted, he didn't play very well versus Maryland. He gave up 3 total pressures on the day. I believe he was our second worst graded offensive lineman according to Pro Football Focus. So again, Gunnar Too, he has his moments. He got banged up versus Michigan State, another really bad performance from him. So just something to monitor. We can't afford to lose him and Pritchett though. Like, I'm cool if Pritchett doesn't play, but suddenly if Gunnar's out and you have to go back to Teddy and Turner at both left and right tackle, that's a huge issue. So Gunnar will play versus the Gophers. I'm less concerned about that going forward, but again, it definitely has impacted his play, so something we should monitor in the future. And then a couple others we need to talk about. Mekhi Nelson was suspended versus Maryland. Now, he wasn't fully suspended. Of course, he was out there a little bit on special teams. I believe he actually had 1 rep total on offense. He did make the trip. Now, what happened with Mekhi Nelson throughout the week again was nothing crazy. It was nothing, again, super hardcore. Of course, he got suspended, of course, versus Houston Christian as well. Again, but I try to tell you guys, we have a very tough culture at Nebraska. Matt Rhule tries to lay down law on these guys, right? And if you come here and you're not doing everything right off the field, again, sometimes these rules are maybe even a little bit unfair. Okay, if you are doing as much as showing up late to practice or not being 100% bought in throughout the week, your role is going to be diminished. And I'm not saying that's what Mekhi Nelson did. I know what Mekhi Nelson did. And again, trust me when I say this, it wasn't a big deal. That's why he still played on special teams. But again, if you want the reason why he did not, I believe, again, he only got 1 offensive snap, it's because, again, he did something throughout the week that, again, just wasn't to the standard. And Matt Rhule said, you know what, we're going to go with Isaiah Mozee, and Quinn Ives also took his snaps as well. So the only thing I'd say that's concerning around this is, again, Mekhi's still learning the culture. I think Mekhi's going to be fine going forward. But again, when this is the second time this has happened, yeah. Because, again, it happened versus Houston Christian, right? And it happened once again versus Maryland. So, again, I believe Mekhi Nelson's incredibly talented. I just don't want to see this going forward because he has proven to me that he could be our running back too. And at this point, when we're getting down the stretch in the year, he's not only hurting us, but he's hurting his career if he continues to kind of not be fully bought in off the field. Again, that's not really the issue. I'm not going to sit here and act like what he did was incredibly bad. It wasn't. It really wasn't that big of a deal at all. But once again, we have a tough culture. So Mekhi Nelson, he will be active versus Minnesota. He will be active. I want to make that very clear. It was a 1-game suspension. Again, it wasn't a full suspension because he played on special teams. But they did punish him on offense, if that makes sense. And then going on to the final guys, Dane Key. I get a lot of questions about Dane Key, what his availability is going forward. Of course, he went down versus Maryland. Dane Key should be 100% going into Minnesota. What happened versus Maryland is, simply put, he had the wind knocked out of him, and he came back a couple plays later and, of course, scored the game-winning touchdown. So Dane Key is going to be perfectly fine. Again, just got the wind knocked out of him. I believe he got hit on the head a little bit. So if anything, we got to deal maybe a concussion in there, but as for his body, he is 100% good. Benton Shaver, same deal. Again, he went down very early on the ball game versus Maryland, came back, made some nice plays. He's been dealing with his hamstring throughout the entire season. Again, he was questionable going into Cincinnati to begin the year because of that hamstring. Now, I'm not of the impression that the hamstring has went fully away. It's clearly good enough that he's starting now because, again, it's healed a little bit, but again, he did go down, I believe it was, once again, a lower body injury. So this is something to monitor, but Vincent should be ready to go for Minnesota. And also want to highlight this name. Gabe Moore is 100% healthy, and he is back. And, man, Gabe Moore's playing some good snaps. We need to give Gabe Moore some respect because whenever he's out there, man, I'm impressed with him. I really think that he's going to make an impact, in these final 6 games and going into next year for Nebraska. I'm a big Gabe Moore guy. Really, really like him and what he does for Nebraska. So just wanted to highlight him really quickly because, again, he's playing very well for the Huskers. Other than that, talking injuries, we know that Jamarion Parker is not out for the entire year. He will hopefully be back at some point, maybe going into, again, the final weeks of the season. They at least want him to get to the point where he can practice. So Jamarion Parker, just watch out for that name. We know that Tristan Vano has been out for the majority of the season dealing with a groin injury. Again, I'm at the point Tristan Vano where at some point you got to move on, right? He's not the guy here. He's dealt with injuries. Again, I believe he got injured after Akron is what happened. So again, he, for whatever reason, his confidence completely shook, but he's not the player he once was. So expect Alvano to move on after the end of the year because he probably won't be available for the rest of the season. And other than that, we're pretty much healthy for the most part, but we definitely are banged up. We definitely got some bloodies, some bruises, and hopefully that doesn't really add up versus Minnesota. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts down below about everything. Hey, if you made this far, hit that like button and subscribe. As always, folks, go Matt Rhule, and I'll see you in the next one.